Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chill Like a Mother podcast. I'm Kayla Huszar, the host, and I'm recently trying on the title Mom Guilt Therapist. And so part one of this episode series was Danik sharing the story about her great grandmother. And here we are going to pick up where we left off, where she shares a story of her sitting in a rocking chair at 2 a.m. with her newborn son, and she gets this wave of emotion. But it doesn't feel like a now emotion. It feels like an old emotion. And in this episode, we really deconstruct what it kind of feels like when you experience sensations of what could be intergenerational trauma. So keep listening for the rest of the episode. Intergenerational trauma and how we inherit things that we don't even know, like they're not ours. They don't feel like ours. They don't feel like they fit in our body and our minds. But yet we can't maybe put our thumb on it, but it feels like it's pulsing through us.
Yeah, totally. Pulsing through us, yes. So it's 2 a.m. I'm rocking my baby and I'm taking a mental note of that because I'm having this weird sensation in my body. I don't know what to make of it. It could very well be that in the moment, like in that example, you're just too freaking tired to understand what the heck's going on.
Yes.
Just too tired. But also, if you do take kind of this mental note of, all right, well, last night I had this really weird sensation come through, then at a later time, you'll be able to just look back on it with a fresh pair of eyes and notice if there's any patterns. So I don't know that I had mentioned that in the episode, but one thing that I noticed for me is that whenever I was around my daughter, I was getting that sensation more and more, but not so much around my son. And I was like, what is it about my daughter? Like, yeah, she's the littlest and yeah, she's the one that's the most demanding of me right now, but what is it about her exactly? So then that's when I decided, all right, I'll look at different scenarios and different possible answers here, because what I knew about postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, postpartum mental health in general just wasn't fitting with what I was going through. So what I would say is that mental note is really important. And in the moment, it's totally okay if you don't know what to do with it. I know that in the moms I see in my practice, there can be this panic that sets in when we don't know what to do in the moment. And that's why, there's this idea of taking care of our nervous system proactively
Yes.
comes in handy with feeling, safe, even if we don't know what the heck to do with this information our body's giving us, but looking at what the body's doing as data. And then the data is for you to collect and analyze and understand what it means. But you might not have that answer right away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The chicken or egg thing is so fascinating for me. I'm trying out this new skill called sketch notes, and it's where you create visuals based on what you're hearing or what you're watching. And so the challenge that I'm giving myself is anytime I listen to a podcast or come across new information, I try to make sense of it visually. And so when I was listening to your episode around like, what is the first? What is the first thing? At first it was, okay, so if the children are first, then where's mom? Like, and I had a hard time with that. And I was like, okay, maybe it's side by side. But then I was like, both side by side creates a lot of tension, right? And I think that's what a lot of moms out in the world are struggling with, or at least the ones who come across my desk. They're struggling with this, like, I know I want to break cycles. I know I want to show up differently than how I was parented in whatever way that looks like. But I don't know how to do that without taking time for me. Like I can't, like, and there's this like side by side kind of push and pull. And so then I tried to do it where I was listening to what you were saying and put it, top and bottom, and it still didn't fit. And so I actually loved what you said about being proactive with it. It's not like what's first, and actually naming that if you do want your children to come first, that's data, that's information, that's like value alignment, but that there needs to be some proactive stuff. It was almost like what I was drawing became kind of 3D, right? It was like if the children are here, if you're watching the video, it will be much more helpful. I don't know if I can get it into words yet. Is like the children are in front, And the mom is like meeting that from behind, but she has to feel resourced in order to meet that somehow. The age old thing of like, no, I'm exhausted and it's 2 a.m. and I don't know if I can go on. Like how many times have any of us thought that thought, right? Like, I cannot get up one more time. Like, it will kill me if I have to get up one more time. And we get up 10 more times. And that, like, what is the proactive stuff? What is the stuff that mom needs, which is different for every mom, to meet that I want to do things differently?
Yeah. Yeah. So the proactivity is something that I came up with in terms of, treating depression symptoms, treating the anxiety, the trauma of the moms that came to see me. And like you've mentioned, obviously, when there's a need that arises, we can't go, wait, child, I'm just going to take a bubble bath while.
And then I can deal with your meltdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you not melt down right now? Like, it's inconvenient for me.
Exactly. Also, just to continue giving in a state of total depletion, and you're going into the minuses in your battery life. You're not just at 0%, you're in the minuses. That's not sustainable either. Proactivity means to look at, how can I say this? Proactivity means you have this awareness around your windows of threat, is what I call it. The windows of threat are moments where you risk, more often than not, to feel triggered, to feel like that's it, to go into fight, flight, freeze, even the fawn response when you're putting to the side your needs, values, what you know is good for your family, and you're just going into people-pleasing mode in order to avoid any kind of threat that might pop up. And when we're in the window of threat, then that's when we're going to be giving out of depletion, or where we risk going into some emotional neglect because we have nothing to give. And the unintentional emotional neglect here is a very real thing. Certainly that's been something that I had to experience in my motherhood, because as somebody who has zero village, parenting a baby who had ADHD and I had no freaking clue, who was so sensitive, I couldn't always give, right? And I, of course, was not being proactive with my nervous system and my own needs to be at a certain baseline, because like I didn't know that. And that was back then, and it's something that's difficult to come up with by ourselves when we're totally depleted. So anyways, the window of threat is something that happens in a 24-hour cycle, and we need to be proactive when it comes to that. So when you know for yourself, let's say, well, I'm going to use myself as an example. For me, for the longest time, my number one window of threat, and you can have multiple ones, but for me, my number one window of threat was in the morning, because my partner, he works in construction. He has to leave really, really early in the morning. I have always been alone with the two kids. Every morning I'm like,
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
Alone, except maybe weekends, but still.
Yeah.
And so that was a real window of threat, because I knew that any demand that I would put on my son, for example, he would not have it. Put your shoes on, let's go, transitions, let's eat, all the transitions until daycare drop off back then. And that would be my window of threat, where I would lose it more often than not. And so I went, all right, now I know this about myself. That's my window of threat. What do I need here in order to prevent going into this? And I got really frustrated by these tips and tricks that we hear about when it comes to grounding, when it comes to preventing losing it. Like, oh, when you are feeling like you're losing it, look at your toddler's hands, how little their hands are. And I'm like, I don't care.
I'm like, I'm seeing red. I don't give a shit.
Exactly. So I was like, no, there must be something here that we're all collectively missing. So that's where the idea of proactivity came. it's also informed by my main modality, which is EMDR, about the whole proactivity thing where we can essentially desensitize ourselves to an upcoming stressor before it even comes, so that when the stressor comes, our body knows how to react to that stressor. It's like we've given it options, where when we're actively in the window of threat, like you said, we see red, we can't even function. It's because whatever's stored in our logical thinking brain is not making its way to what's activated in the moment, which is the subconscious survival brain. So I was like, okay, we need to be proactive here, because we can't rely on that poor brain. It's not even, the logical part isn't even online to come and help us. So I was like, all right, let's look at what we can do beforehand when we have labeled and where it's clear for us at least one window of threat in a 24-hour cycle. So I was like, all right, for me, it's in the mornings. So then I'm like, what can I do in the morning? Well, then that's where I recognize, like, I get woken up by my kids. Even if I wake up just 5 minutes before them and then they end up rushing into my room because, of course, they have spidey senses whenever I open my eyes, then at least I won't be so surprised and I won't start my day feeling so flustered.
Yes.
Even if it's just 5 minutes and I'm just bed rotting for 5 minutes, they're not the ones responsible for opening my eyelids, you know?
Yes.
So that's one way. And then other ways are, well, as you're approaching, that window of threat, but you're still in your logical thinking brain, going in with the what your body needs to understand in order to stay safe. So like the one of the most popular grounding techniques is box breathing. If it's medically okay to do so, breathing in 4 seconds and then hold 4 seconds and then exhale 4 seconds and then hold 4 seconds and then you repeat. But the problem is there's not much strategy around it. It's
Mhm.
not a strategy to use that tool. There's no strategy. The strategy needs to come from us. So it needs to be proactive. So what I ended up happening was, all right, when I wake up in the morning, even if nothing has happened, even if my toddler is happy as can be when he wakes up, even if there aren't any crises that need my attention, I'm going to start box breathing. I'm going to remain in my logical brain for as long as humanly possible, so that if there's this trigger that ends up happening whenever I'm in my window of threat, then I will maximize the chances of me staying in my logical adult thinking brain all throughout. So then I can choose to respond to my kids first, but the chicken wins.
Yes. Okay, you just described exactly the tool that our first couples counselor used with us. So we went together and then we had a couple of individual sessions and then we would have a together session. And my thing was that I experience a lot of unregulated anger. And so it's not regulated. It's not like I'm choosing to be angry. The situation expects me to be angry. It's like I'm flying off because of teeth brushing, or I am screaming because people won't put on their shoes. Right. And so we had a lot of conversations about my perception of anger, how I feel about it, being on the receiving end, witnessing up the whole thing. And the thing that he told me was a somatic exercise where I would feel my body wherever it was, whether I was sitting or standing or lying down, is that I would zoom in on the point of contact where my body was touching the ground or the bed or the chair. And what he said to me was, he said, I want you to practice this 100 times a day. And I looked at him and I was like, pardon the fuck? 100 times a day? I don't have time to pee. Okay. Like, read the room. Right. And he was like, no, legit. Like, if you want this to change, you're a therapist. He very much pulled on the intuition of like, what you need to do. You're having a hard time accessing it. Right. And so he was like, all you have to do, like, he's like, I'm doing it right now. I'm sitting here with you and I'm checking in with my body right now while I'm having a conversation with you. And he explained the whole thing. Like, you don't have to make time for it. You do it while you're doing something else. Right. So you do it while you're making the lunch. You do it while you're talking to someone. You do it while you're in the shower. It's not extra. And I thought, you like literally, I was sitting there. I thought, you are nuts. Like, you're not a parent. And he wasn't. But I was just like, this is impossible. Do you know, read the room. So anyway, being the good student that I am, I went home and I did it. And I did it for about a week. And I could feel myself reaching that, what you call the window of threat. And then it wouldn't happen. I wouldn't yell, or I would maybe think about yelling, but I could stop myself because I could feel my feet on the floor. Or he said, when you can't feel something on, like, within your body, like if you can't actually drop into your bum in the chair or the feet on the floor, he had me focus on my throat. And so I would focus on my throat and then I wouldn't yell because I could actually hear and notice and feel the speed and the things coming out of my mouth, and I could actually stop myself. And I thought this was like magic. And like I can hear myself, like I hear myself when I tell people this story and they look at me and they're like, no, it's not that easy. It's not that easy is often the response that I get. Right. And I practiced it because I'm conditioned to be a good girl. I did it. I went home and I did my homework, and then it worked. And then I was mad. I was mad that it worked. But it was exactly that. He didn't teach me how to do it in the moment when I was yelling or after I had yelled. The whole tool was proactive.
Exactly. That's the missing piece. That's the missing piece. It's the proactivity of it all. It's a good thing that you went through and that you've experienced it for yourself. You know, I really like to translate kind of those things where, well, do this 100 times a day. Okay, but why?
Yes.
It's the proactivity piece. You're meeting your needs first so that you can meet your kids' need first, so that
Yes.
your kids can come first. But you have to meet your need first. It's the proactivity piece. Yeah,
Yes.
you were totally remaining in your adult logical thinking brain.
Mhm.
Non-triggered you was behind the steering wheel of your brain, gaining that body awareness. Yeah, and then as you entered your window of threat, well, he was like, "Oh shit, okay.
Yeah.
I understand what's going on, and I have another option."
Yes.
You gave yourself that other option proactively.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you. It was it, and you know, it's a lesson. It's a lesson and a tool that has ebbed and flowed throughout parenting. As anybody who's been, in the journey, if you're in it brand new, it might feel really weird to be considering or talking about these things. But if you're 5 or 10 or 15 or 20, 25 years into parenting, this tool for me has been something that comes and goes, right? And it's that listening to the body piece that I find really, really helps me, because I'll get into those phases again, right? A new age, a new developmental level for them, a new language, a new, I've got a almost preteen. And so there's like communication changes, expectations change. There's like all these things that change, right? And so it's comes and goes, but it is that proactiveness is something that I am so glad that he taught me and that I was willing to receive it, because I think I could have not received it. I could have gone back the next session and been like, it didn't work. Give me
Yeah.
something new to try. But
Yeah.
it's something that I come back to over and over again when there's been a series of days, months, weeks, until that awareness kind of kicks in that I've been involved in a pattern that I don't love, that I'm not showing up the way that I want to show up, or I'm not zooming in to their hands or their face. I'm not looking at them when I'm mad, right? When I get into that, I need to shut it all off, because if I could actually hear the words coming out of my mouth and see your face, I would be gutted.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has been something that has come and gone. There are times when I need it, and there are times when I don't use it as much. And it's those times when I feel that unregulated anger come in again. And there's lots of reasons, nuanced reasons why. ADHD, I'm probably approaching perimenopause. Like there's like a lot of physical things that are happening for the stress response. And so there have been times when I've used it, and there's been times when I've not had to use it. And I think along the spectrum of parenting, at least the women who are sitting in front of me who are often saying, why do I have to learn this again? I thought I dealt with this. I thought when my son was 2 and I was in therapy and I went for a year and I really dealt with my shit, but now they're 6 and I'm back again and I feel like it's the same theme. That journey have its own ebb and flow. There are tools that you need at certain phases of parenting and tools that you don't need. Sometimes you have to for a time put yourself first before you can put the kids first. And then there's a time when you have to put them first and you've got to squeeze in your first in the margins.
Yeah, you're naming something really important here, and that's because ultimately in throughout the seasons of our life, our windows of threat will change. As you were sharing that, I was thinking, well, you know what? My window of threat, my main one anyways, where before used to be the mornings, has shifted not too long ago. And I found myself having much more ease now in the morning that my kids are both school age and they're a little older. There's more autonomy, less demands put on my nervous system. So now there's a lot more ease. But I find that when my partner leaves in the evenings, if ever he wants to go and meet friends or whatever, and I'm alone and bedtime is on me only, then that's my new window of threat. So the tool itself, what I'm thinking about is, tools that are based in the body when it comes to these types of things are really important, but the strategy behind it is even more important. The
Mm,
proactivity is even more important. I don't know if you've seen that circulate, but at some point on Facebook and Instagram anyways, there was this like nervous system type of hack where they mentioned, well, you have to, whenever you're feeling dysregulated, notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can smell and whatnot. And it's like, well, that strategy can help for real, except that it won't help when you're in it.
yes.
You got to do it
Yes.
before.
Before.
If you choose that one,
Yes.
not my
Yeah.
favorite, but you choose it, whatever you choose, honestly, do it before your window of threat happens. I think that's the key.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for wanting to come on and talk about your journey through finding out some of these like pieces of intergenerational trauma and breaking cycles and how you can show up and be the mom that you want to be and the tools you named and also the reasons behind it. I think are such a key piece that you've named here today of like, okay, this is my tool, but why is this my tool? And when is this my tool? Because you're right. When we're in reptilian brain, when we're just in survival and we actually perceive our children as a threat or any other relationship or any other task as a threat, we're going to act from that animalistic space, even when it's the person we love the most and or don't want to damage or can actually see the damage happening in front of you. And so the naming the tool, figuring out the tool that's helpful or the strategy and using it or getting practice at it before the heat of the moment in that proactive way will actually meet that expectation of I want to show up as the mom in this way, or I want to put my kids first, or like, yeah,
Yes. That's why the chicken wins.
that's why the chicken wins. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Yes, thank you. Please, please go check out Danik's podcast called The Healing Mothers Club. It is incredible. I've already binged a few episodes just this last weekend because I just feel like there is a naming of things that are happening outside of what I might call the generic wellness content that actually gets to the root and some real self-reflection on what moms and people at large can do to support themselves through these really tricky things.
Thank you so much, Kayla.